Has homeschooling ever felt hard for you? Has it ever felt like your kids are behind? Do you ever feel like they or you are missing out on something by not being in school? Maybe life has gotten complicated and it just feels easier to put your kids in school. You ever thought that? Have you ever felt like, oh, I could just use a little bit of free time to myself? If you said yes to any one of those questions, I want you to stop scrolling through your podcast app and listen to this episode. We're going to talk about what is really the truth about this question. And a lot of people will throw this type of question out at you, even if you're not asking yourself these types of questions. And when someone says it to you, and possibly when you are even saying it to yourself, you truly don't understand what it means. And that's what we're going to cover today. Welcome to Little by Little Homeschool Podcast, where you'll learn tips and strategies that will empower you to home educate your children. I'm Leigh Nguyen, a homeschool mom of over 12 years, which includes 2 graduates. When I started homeschooling, I was pretty much on my own and was desperate for encouragement and help. My mission is to be a source of encouragement and help to you. Whether you are just beginning your homeschool journey or you're deep into the homeschool lifestyle, Little by Little Homeschool wants to help you stay the course because all the time you are investing into your children is completely worth it. If you're ready to take your homeschool to new levels, keep listening. As homeschool moms, we get the pleasure of getting comments and questions. I don't even really think it counts as a question. It's more of a comment with a right at the end of it. Things like, oh, it's so cute that you're homeschooling kids when they're young, but you'll put them in high school, right? Or, oh, you're having another baby. You'll put your older kids in school, right? Oh, little Johnny struggling to learn to read. You'll put him in school, right? The right, that always gets me, right? Right. As if them saying that, just adding that question of right makes it a question, as opposed to, really, they're making a statement to you. So whether others are saying these types of things to you or you are thinking it, this topic is really rampant in our culture. And I just want to tell you that it is so common to be thinking this. So if you have thought this of, well, it would just be easier just to put them into school or back into school if they have been removed and taken home from the public school and you're now homeschooling them. Now, a few weeks ago, I was on a mentorship call with an amazing mom, and I'm so excited for her, and I love doing those and connecting with different moms. And I told her, look, it's going to get hard. It really is. Let's just put it out there and say it. It's something that we sometimes don't want to talk about or don't want to admit. But homeschooling and being a homeschool mom is going to be hard at times, and you're going to want to quit. I did. I wanted to quit, but I didn't quit. Keep remembering to yourself that if God is calling you, He will equip you. It doesn't mean He's going to remove you from the difficult situation or from the struggles or from just the emotions and how it is draining for you. It doesn't mean He's going to remove you from it. He is going to equip you. Maybe, just possibly, actually I know, that this time of homeschooling can be really great in your sanctification process, and you might not think it's great at the time, but later on down the road you will. But just know that it is hard. It gets hard. There are some easy times and there is some really good times. And we all at some point want to quit. Those that continue on and complete all of the years of homeschooling that they set out to do, the only reason they did that is because they didn't quit. There was many moments that I just wanted to give up because it felt like putting my kids into school. It just felt like it was easier. Guess what? It might have been easier at that time, for that day. It might have been easier for just a couple of weeks to give me a chance to breathe. But our goal and our sights as homeschool moms needs to be bigger than that, and not just let's make it easy at the time. Because easier at the time doesn't equate easier down the road. Before we get into this truth about is it really easier to put your kids into school, let's first establish this. You have to have a foundation for why you are homeschooling. You have to have a why. Sometimes that why starts off as I am wanting my kids to be homeschooled, or we as a couple are wanting our kids to be homeschooled because we want to avoid something. And in the beginning, that's fine. But if we are constantly trying to avoid something and we don't have something that we want to pour into them, that we want to give them and to fill them up, you're focused then on the negative instead of the positive. So that can be a fine start. Say, I don't like the curriculum that is going on in the school. I don't want my kids exposed to those other kids. Whatever the reason for why not wanting to put them into something to begin with is okay. But I want to encourage you to turn that around and to not continually focus on that. It can start you out, but focus on what is it actually going to give you. The foundation for your homeschool is your why. Why are you homeschooling? We go extensively into this in your homeschool blueprint. So if you aren't in that, I encourage you to join so that you can actually figure out what is your why. I'm going to make you do it. Because if you don't have this why, it's going to be easier to say, that's it, I'm done. It's just easier for me to put my kids into school and not have to worry about, let the teachers deal with it, let the principal deal with it, let them do their curriculum, let them teach them how to read, let them deal with all of this and prepare them for the future so that I don't have to do it. But like I mentioned, just because it's easier right now does not mean that it's easier down the road. And we're going to get into what is really the truth about homeschool and what you're doing, but you have to have your why. And again, we go over that in your homeschool blueprint. Would love to see you over there. It's at littlebylittlehomeschool.com/blueprint. And anything that I mentioned, the links are always in the show notes as well for you. But your answer to your why also has to be bigger than academics. Because if it's only academics, you will then see school as an equivalent. Well, what we're doing here as homeschoolers, as home educators, we are just preparing them academically. We are just focused on academics. And if that is your sole focus, then yes, it would be easier just to put them in somewhere else that is going to focus on academics. If you want to continue to homeschool for the long haul, academics is a part of it, yes, but homeschool is an entire lifestyle. And if you are only focused on the academics, you might very much more so lean towards caving and just saying, I'm just going to put them in school because that would just be easier. So you have to have your foundation of why you are homeschooling. And I encourage you to make this something that you and your husband discuss and that you have in writing so you continually can go back to it. Because like I mentioned, we all at times want to quit. And if we have something in writing, we can go back to it to remember. Now, let's dive into what is the truth about what home education / homeschooling really is. So in this episode, I feel a little weird saying homeschool because there's school. So I might just kind of refer a bit more to it as home education, even though the common phrase is homeschool. I wish we could get rid of that and drop the school part of it because we're not doing school at home, but it's just as the common phrase that everybody knows. So what really is home education about? Yes, there's the academics, but there is way more. And there's actually things that are more important than academics. Did I actually just say that out loud? All right, the school police are going to come and arrest me. I don't know. All the Department of Education people are going to come and get me. Oh, well, I'm here. Come get me. I don't mind. But there is so much more to home education. Home education, first, is about relationships. It is about the relationship between you and each of your individual children. It is the relationship between them and their father, between your family as a whole. It is between them as siblings, and that's if some of you are homeschooling and you have one child, that's okay too. Doesn't mean that they're missing out on anything, but it is about relationships. There is so much more than the academics. The relationships, honestly, is going to be the most important thing. They learn to work together. They learn to work in a family unit. They get to be very, very close if you allow them to. Now, there's going to be times where maybe there's personalities and there's different kids that'll kind of get others riled up and everything. But the goal then is to focus on the relationships as a whole. And you, as the mom, having a really deep relationship with your child. Now, all of these things that I'm going to mention today, I actually have 4 points that I want to make. This does not mean that you cannot have relationships if your kids are in school. You can, but when you are 24/7 and when your entire life is revolved around being together and moving through life and accomplishing things like academics, accomplishing chores and accomplishing all the things, all the things that go into life. When it is living life together, you automatically form relationships. And so homeschool, if you focus on it being about relationships, that's something that they are going to carry with them the rest of their life, which leads me into the second point I want to talk about. And that, yes, it might be easier right now to just put them into school, but home education can really prepare them for their future. We get to look at, what do I want my kids to learn about? How do I want them to be equipped? What experiences do I want them to have in order to prepare them for their future? That is a part of home education. Do you want your kids to be able to cook? Maybe even if it's just a few meals when they get out onto their own, then you fit that into what you're doing. For myself, I stopped and I thought about, what is it that I wish that I had when I stepped out into the world, whether that was going off to college or that was getting an apartment on my own after college or it was getting married. I think getting married and having that marriage relationships and adding kids, there was a lot I was like, oh, I wish that I knew about how to do this and I wish I knew about this. So really looking at maybe, what is it that you wish that you knew, knowing that you're not going to cover everything. But what did you wish that you knew how to do? And then take the time to do that. This time that they are at home with us, it's such a good time. There's just, now, okay, not all the times are good, but it is a sweet spot in life when your kids are at home. And you're going to start to notice that it was a sweet spot when your kids are getting older. Like I'm kind of at that point right now. I'm like, oh, that was so nice. Although we do put rose-colored glasses on and look back. But there was a lot of hard times and a lot of things that we just have to focus on. So what is it that you can do that can prepare them for their future and stepping out into the world? If having a biblical worldview is important to you, that's been so important to my family, then we prepare them for that. Prepare them in the way that they can have conversations about what they believe and why they believe it, and also what do others believe, so that they have the opportunity to speak into them and to understand where people are coming from and to know how to have those conversations and to know how to listen and to stop and make sure somebody feels heard in order for them then to hear what my kiddo has to say about that in response to it. So preparing them for their future. And again, this is something that you can do if your kids are in school, but we get to do it a lot longer, and a lot more intensely. So think about what you can do and what you want to do in order to prepare them for their future. And a lot of times, the people that are not homeschooling don't think about that. They just assume that the school is preparing them for the future. And maybe they are, but is that the future you want them to be prepared for? The third point that I want to make is that home education is a lot about training and discipleship. And you get to decide what that looks like. There is a lot of discipleship that can go into homeschooling and raising of your kids and a lot of guiding of them. And what is that foundation, that basis? Again, for my family, that was coming back to a biblical worldview and using the Bible as our guidance for that. And so just training them how you want them to interact in the world and how they can take care of a home and how they can take care of a car and how they relate to other people and how to care for animals and how to care for your property and to be able to just whatever it is. What is it that you want to train them in? What type of discipleship do you want to give them? You get to give that to them 24/7. And home education, the homeschool lifestyle is really set up to do that. And you can find resources. I remember doing a ton of character development, and my kids were not always quite thrilled about that. And I would talk to them about diligence and working hard, and they would groan and kind of complain and maybe roll their eyes. And we're talking about this again. And we would talk about work ethic. So, for example, my youngest has got his first job outside of working for his brother. He wanted to work for his brother, but we felt it was important for him to work for a different type of boss and to work in an environment with a lot of different people that he wouldn't normally have crossed paths with and have to deal with customers. We feel like customer service is a really important thing to be able to learn, and we can walk him through that. And he will come home and just talk about just how others are working and how they get there, and they're just constantly asking to leave. And so we've had a lot of really great conversations, and it's just within a few weeks, he was like, I took the test to move up to the next level. and so that he could be working some different shifts and he could work in a shift where he could receive some tips. And I don't know. It's just as some jobs just have different levels and it just is kind of seen as a thing. And so he's like, I want to work up to the next level and then the next level. And he's like, some of these kids have been there for 2 years and they're still at the base level. And I've been there for 3 weeks. And actually, I think it was a month, but he only worked 3 weeks because we were away 1 week, which that was already set up for us to be out of town. And he's like, I'm already up to level 2. He's like, I just don't understand it. And I'm like, you've got a good work ethic. And he's like, yeah, I guess so. Like, yeah, that was part of the training and discipleship. We wanted them to have a good work ethic. Yes, there's some times where maybe something just doesn't work out, but we didn't want them to be quitters. And when you go and do something, you do something to the best of your ability. Also, let your yes be yes, let your no be no. Carry through with what you say that you're going to do, even if at the time you don't want to do it. Those types of things. And so home education really allows parents to train and provide discipleship to their children. The fourth point here, the number 4 I want to talk about is that home education allows us to give our children a love of learning. It is so much bigger than just putting them into school and memorizing certain facts so that you can regurgitate it, put it onto a test, and then afterwards get your grade and throw it away and never think about that again. How about instead of that, we give them a love of learning, understanding that they're never going to know everything. It's impossible to know everything, and it's okay to not know everything. And it's okay to not learn everything that somebody says that you have to learn. So in the school, there is certain things that you are supposed to learn. Let's translate that into curriculum. This might ruffle some feathers, but just because a curriculum says that you need to learn about something. Now, this is a little bit further out from language, arts, and math. So let's talk specifically maybe about science or geography or history or art, any of those other subjects. When it comes to math, yes, you need to learn your math facts, your arithmetic, your addition math facts before you learn subtraction. And then you move on to multiplication and division. So that actually makes sense. But beyond that, if you never get to calculus, you never get to trigonometry, you never get into any other maths that I don't even probably know exist, but actually do exist, unless you're going to go into a math field, nobody says you have to get into that. But understanding that even a curriculum that says in a certain science, so say you're going to study about mammals in this science, and it says you need to learn all these things about them. What if you went off script, and what if they really got into a certain type of animal and you just dove so much deeper into that and you never quite got through the book? That's all right. I think what more importantly you have accomplished is that you have given them a love of learning. They have not wanted to stop. How many of us, I'm over here raising my hand, once you were done with quote unquote learning what you needed to for a test, you're done cramming it all in, you quickly forgot about it and had no care or desire about that topic? How about when you finished, whether you finished from high school or you finished from college, didn't want to do any type of learning beyond that? That was me. School really killed my desire to learn. I have not met a child yet who does not love to learn. Now, I'm thinking a young child. And unfortunately, as we go through school, we equate learning with school, and therefore we realize that school is such a drag, therefore learning is a drag. Instead, when we home educate, we can give them a love of learning. How do you do that? By providing them resources, by really being interested in what they want to learn about, sharing with them things that you're learning or topics that you're learning. If they are seeing mom and dad learning about new things in your 20s, 30s, 40s, they will be amazed. Wow, my parents, they don't know everything, and they're continuing to learn. And that will give them a desire at a young age and help them to also feel like it's okay to continue learning beyond their formal education years. And I hope that, like I have done, I have taken that negativity that I had towards school and have worked through that, work through the deschooling and realizing that school does not always equate education. Yes, you can have some education in school, but education can be completely apart from school and do it on our own. And so I have developed a love of learning. If you have not, I want to encourage you to do so, because we can only pass on to our children what we actually have. And it's okay to be developing a love of learning right alongside of them. Okay, so we started off this episode talking about how people are like, oh, it would just be easier if you just put them into school. Yes, it might be easier right now. You'd have a little bit of free time. You wouldn't have the burden of their education upon your shoulders. You would have a little bit of margin. Your kids would maybe have some things that they're hoping of and wishing for more time with their friends, even though when you're in school, you're told not to socialize with your kid with their friends and not to talk to them or you get into trouble. Well, that's a whole nother rabbit hole. But yes, maybe it is easier right now for the short term. But I want you to focus on your why and focus on the long term. It's not easier long term. There's a lot of other habits and a lot of other things that you have to break. But home education is really about relationships. It's about preparing them for their future. It's about training and discipleship. And it's about giving them the love of learning. The academics and the curriculum, all of that stuff, it just comes alongside of those different areas. And if they were in school, you would miss these things to the depth that you can accomplish when you are home educating and you have 24/7. Yes, there's time for sleeping, you're sleeping, they're sleeping, but overall, you have a fully complete immersive lifestyle that you can impart these to your kids. So stay focused on long-term, we'll say quote unquote, easier, because I promise you it is easier to home educate for all these years. In the end, it's easier because your kids have had this focus of relationships, being prepared for their future. They've had the training and discipleship. They've been given a love of learning from you because you guys 24/7 have been pouring into them. And I would love the privilege of being able to come alongside you to an even more depth than I do here on the podcast. And I can do that when you join your homeschool blueprint, which is the step-by-step process to either establish or to reestablish your homeschool. Whether you are going into your very first year of homeschool or you are a year into it, or maybe you're 5, 7 more years into it and you have lost your focus and you don't know your why, you don't know how to pick the best curriculum and things to come along with you guys academically, I would encourage you to go check out your homeschool blueprint at littlebylittlehomeschool.com/blueprint, because it really is easier even to focus on these relationships, preparing them for the future, the training, discipleship, and giving them the love of learning when you don't have to necessarily worry about the curriculum and setting up your homeschool. We're going to do that together in your homeschool blueprint, and then you can just take off with the rest of these things. Thanks for sticking around to the end of this episode, and I promise to be back here really soon to chat with you again. Thank you for listening, friend. I'd love to connect with you more. You can find social media links in the show notes and share this episode with a friend who could use a boost to her homeschool. See you back here real soon.